Welcome back into Four More Pages. I'm your host, Maya Clark, and on this episode, we're going to be talking about books that I read in 2025, books that I've read so far in 2026, and also some books that our newsroom is currently reading. And so, hopefully, this just gives you some ideas of books that you can read. So, starting off with books that I read in 2025, I'm going to go through some of these a little bit quick, and then the ones that were my favorites, I'll talk about them a little bit, but let's get into it. All right, my first book that I read was Speak by J.L. Seegers. I love her New Haven series, and I have just continued to read her books over the past few years, and so Speak was a really good one. I just love her style of writing in that a lot of it has to do with romance. She focuses on romance, and so I just really love the different romance books that she produces and creates, and just the passion that you can feel through her books and through each character, because I think sometimes when it comes to romance they kind of all become the same, but with hers I feel like there's something that distinguishes each book, and so this is another good one. I'm going to be looking at my Goodreads as well. It's on my phone just to make sure that I don't forget anything. But 1001 Dark Nights, it's a short by Kennedy Ryan. It's a part of a book kind of like series, if you will. And so this one's also really good. It's a short read, Rhythm Blues by Kimberly Brown. Princess and I read this book together, and I think we were both expecting more from it from the reviews that we saw. And it's kind of about someone who's trying to find their groove back again after getting out of a relationship that wasn't great for them. I think that my problem and kind of disconnect with this book was that there wasn't really a lot of character development. And I think that if we would have saw more character development, I would have enjoyed it more, but it's a pretty easy read. Only for the Week by Natasha Bishop. I think this book really focuses on self-love, and I think that's something that can sometimes be really hard, especially depending on the season of life that you're in. But this book, I think I read it with my cousins, and it was around like this time last year. I was traveling to my friend's wedding. But the book, I'm going to read you guys the book description. The buzzy viral sensation Only for the Week is the first book in Natasha Bishop's The Forever Falling series, featuring black love, messy family dynamics, banter, and sweet and spicy romance. You're cordially invited to the wedding of Amiri Cross and Arnold Hightower. A destination wedding in Tulum should be a breeze, but Dr. Janelle Cross, the sister of the bride and ex-girlfriend of the groom, can't catch a break. So the main character is Janelle. She is the maid of honor in her sister's wedding, and her sister is marrying her ex. And it's so messy because I couldn't imagine being in that situation as someone who has a sister. That would never happen for us. And maybe it's because me and my sister are 10 years apart, but reading this book, I was just like so mad at the sister for dating her ex. I think that breaks girl code so much. But throughout the book, Janelle, the main female character, she makes friends with the groom's best friend and like brother, and so they start to have this connection relationship because they both kind of have the same responsibilities as maid of honor and best man, and so you see their relationship develop in this short period of time. And like the description said, there's some tough family dynamics because Janelle's mom hasn't always been the most supportive of her, but more so of her sister, and so you see her kind of come to terms with balance of not just her career but of the new dynamics within her family. The next one is Curvy Girl Summer by Danielle Allen. The main character of this book is given an ultimatum by her uncle, and basically he's like, if you don't have a boyfriend by the end of summer, then I'm not going to give you this boat. And it's a family boat that she loves. Her and her sister, they spent so much time on it, and so she starts going out on these different dates, and ultimately she like falls in love with the bartender who is watching her have all of these first dates, because she is just like stuck, and she wants, of course, to go on these dates in a safe space. And so it's just, I don't know, it's kind of funny, and I enjoyed this book. The next book is Beautiful Broken by Shanora Williams, and it's Beautiful Broken Love. And this one was a really sweet one. It's about second chances, and both of the characters in the book, they're kind of reeling from their tragedies, and so it's like a second chance at love. But it's hard because the main female character in the book is grieving the loss of her husband. And so she's kind of having this internal balance of, is it too soon to move on? How do I move on? And it's a second chance at love for her, but not necessarily with the two people who are in the book. But it's kind of just, grief, figuring out how to grieve and to move forward, and just what that looks like, because grief is something that, it comes in waves, and it's something that, you might think you're over, but then time goes on and you realize you're not. The next one is The Perfect Affair by Angela Henry, switching it up with a non-romance book, because I think even as someone who loves romances, you have to, figure out a way to kind of have other books to read. Right now I've been on a romance kick, and so I think that this book, it was kind of the perfect way to get out of that. But The Perfect Affair, it's a psychological thriller, and a wife suspects that her husband is having an affair with his new colleague, and so the colleague ends up assumed to be dead and missing. And so throughout the book, you see kind of how the affair started, how the wife found out, and why her husband is the main suspect, and how all of the other characters in the book are kind of intertwined. And it really takes you on this like super like windy, weird path, and you're on the edge of your seat, because I think that when you're reading it, you're like, I don't know who did it. And for me, I had no idea who did it until the very end, and I just couldn't grasp it. But there were so many twists and turns and so many family dynamics coming in that you didn't even think about. This one was a really good one, probably one of my favorite kind of like thrillers that I have read. The Beginning of Forever, Colliding with Fate, All I Wanted, All I Needed, A Worthy Love. These books are all by A.E. Valdez. I was new to reading her books last year, and basically this is kind of like a friend group, and they all kind of like start to fall in love. Their stories are a little bit intertwined. It's a really cute, feel-good one, and I feel like with it being the springtime, if you're looking for a good, fun romance that makes you feel good, but also, goes through the ups and downs of, grieving a parent, figuring out what you want to do with your career, things of that nature. It's a really good one. Where We Found Our Love by Natasha Bishop is a good one. Where We Found Our Heart and Where We Found Our Passion, all by Natasha Bishop. It's a series, and it's hard to like describe, because some of them it's like second chance, some of them it's more so, a lot of it feels like a second chance romance, and I go back and forth on if I like second chance romances or not. I think in this case I do. Looking at what I rated them on my Goodreads, though, Where We Found Our Passion, I rated a 3. So I think these were just kind of like average reads for me. Where We Found Our Heart, I rated a 2. And Where We Found Our Home, Where We Found Our Heart, I rated a 4 out of 5 stars. And Where We Found Our Home, I rated a 4 out of 5 stars as well. So the first two were definitely my favorites in this series. Maybe I Love You Undeniably in Love by Brianna Michelle. This one's not on here. I think I forgot to put it on here. But I gave this one a 4 out of 5 stars. And I don't even remember this one, honestly. But I gave it 4 stars. So maybe check it out. Take the Blame by Adorable Huckabee or Daz. I really like this one. Her first book that I read was On Merit Alone, and this one, it's more so this girl, she is just this like free spirit. Her family kind of comes from money, and she ends up getting a job at a tattoo shop, kind of in marketing, because she wants to create her own path, and she falls in love with the tattoo artist. But then there's some tension between the two of them, because he's running from his past, and what she doesn't know, and that he keeps pretty hidden from everyone, is that he actually comes from money, but he wanted nothing to do with it because of how it impacted his sister. And so you see kind of what happens when it's two kind of wealthy families and things of that nature coming together, and when one person is still in the midst of it and one person wants to be as far away from it as possible. Maybe I Love You by Brianna Michelle, Can't Get Enough by Kennedy Ryan, So This Is Love by Makio May, Plus Size Player by Danielle Allen, Even Odds by Maya Anshaw, and Razorblade Tears by S.A. Cosby. And Can't Get Enough by Kennedy Ryan is one of my favorite books. Me and Princess have talked about this book with Hendrix. I just love it. Hendrix is the fun, rich auntie. She doesn't have any kids, but she shows up for her friends and she is taking care of her mom, who is starting to lose kind of her ability to live alone, to take care of herself. And so you see with the caregiving process is like for someone who is taking care of their parent with, you know, Alzheimer's and dementia, and then seeing how love kind of plays into it and how you kind of balance the careers, but also in seeing the main male character go from being in a relationship that wasn't fulfilling to him to suddenly being with someone who does fulfill him and adds value to his life. And so I think that what really stands out about this book is that both people are okay by themselves. They don't necessarily need each other, but they add so much value to each other's lives that they're like, no, this makes sense for us. Razorblade Tears by S.A. Cosby. I love this book. Me and my cousins read this together in our cousins book club. And again, I'm not much of like a thrill seeker when it comes to reading in terms of like thriller and mystery, but these two dads, they are on the hunt to figure out who killed their sons. Their sons were married to each other. One was a journalist and one was a, I believe, like a baker, or like he cooked or something along those lines. And they had just adopted their daughter. They get married, and the parents spend the entire book essentially trying to make up for the fact that they have lost their sons. And both of them throughout the book kind of come to terms with how they treated their sons when they did come out to them, and they have to come to terms with how they were as fathers. And so for them, this is kind of healing because, you know, they feel like they failed them as parents while they were living, but then once they do die and they're trying to figure out who did it, it's kind of their way of healing, and they realize that, you know, we may not have committed the act of killing our sons, but we weren't there for them in the way that they needed us, and now it's too late to tell them that we care about them. And so you really see these two dads heal and go through the grief process and see how their past mistakes impacted their relationships with their sons, and how they're trying to make amends with it and make peace with it now, even though their sons are no longer living. Love by You by Alexandra Lachelle. Before the Forecast, Evie Daniels. Only for the Holidays, Brittany Cherry. The Christmas Catch by Tony Shiloh. The Love Lottery, A Honeybrook Romance by Nina High. Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, Taylor Jenkins Reid. Behind the Forecast was just like a cute little fun read. This meteorologist basically starts to catch feelings for one of the people who starts to work at the station in production, and I thought it would be fun because obviously I work in news. In this book, it was just a cute little fun, easy read and seeing those dynamics. And then Only for the Holidays and the Christmas Catch, Princess and I read that. We've done those reviews on those books. The Love Lottery, A Honeybrook Romance by Nina High was a fun little one. It reminded me of a Hallmark movie because essentially you enter yourself into Love Lottery and Honeybrook, and then you get paired up randomly and you have to go on a certain amount of dates, and you see these people who are both very against the whole thing become interested in it, and, you know, really just lean into it and start to, you know, feel like, you know, maybe it's not the worst thing ever. Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. I read this book with my cousins, and this one was funny because I've heard good things about this book, but I think too, whenever a book kind of has some sort of like historical context, I think that it's fun because you get to kind of get a small glimpse of what life was like in another time, especially for stars. And Evelyn Hugo, she was a woman who had the personality of someone who is very strong and independent, and to see her life story played out in the way that it was explained throughout the book was really kind of fascinating. And also to see, that she still kind of have the same tricks that she had whenever she was, like, young and in her prime, of how she got, this whole memoir about her to be written, and the fact that she was only willing to do it with one person who wasn't even seen as worthy to do it to the people that she worked with. Those are the books that I read in 2025. So far in 2026, I have read a few books. Let's see. I've read 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 books this year so far. I've read 8. I finished this one on New Year's Day, so I feel like I started it last year and I just finished it on New Year's Day. Savvy Sheldon, Feels Good by Taj McCoy. I rated this one 3 out of 5 stars on Goodreads. Savvy goes through a breakup. Her boyfriend breaks up with her because she is plus size and he feels like she works too much, and so she kind of goes on a self-love journey, and in the process, of course, she falls in love with someone else. I will say all the books I've read this year have been romances. I'm about to read another romance, but then I'll be reading another S.A. Cosby book. And so, yeah. Then If You Stayed by Brittany C. Cherry, Sweet Little Hearts by Shanora Williams. I rated Sweet Little Hearts 3 stars, and If You Stayed 4 stars. And then Life Was Beautiful, Handsome Family Book 1 by Asia Monique. It was 3 stars. Lily in the Valley, The Doubleback Diaries Book 2 by Alexandra Lachelle. I really love this book. So I'm going to try and pull it up so that you guys can see the cover of it. But this book was really fun to read because it was the second book in the series, and so you got to see a glimpse of their relationship. Essentially, these two people who have been friends since they were little, growing up in New Orleans, they have this chemistry, but neither one of them is willing to admit that they care about each other and have feelings for each other for a really long time. And so throughout this book, you see them finally kind of come to terms with the fact that, we have feelings for each other. We're not going to hide from it anymore. But distance kind of puts them apart because she ends up going to do a residency and he is back where they live, and she's also grieving in the midst of this. And so you see how those family dynamics play a role in how you love someone and how you allow people to love you. So I think that it was really beautiful and a really good book. I have been reading the Windy City series. This is the book that was missing from my 2025 read. I read The Right Move, Windy City, number 2. But there are 4 books in this series, I believe. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, there's 4 books in this series. I've been reading the Windy City series. The first book that I read in the Windy City series this year is Mile High. These are all sports romances. The first one is about a hockey player, professional hockey player, Xander's, him and Stevie. It's their story. Xander's is a arrogant professional hockey player. Stevie is the team's new flight attendant. And they basically are not allowed to date, but they end up dating anyway, but like kind of keeping it a secret. And so you see how that plays a role, and just the insecurities that they both have to overcome because Stevie's mom is very toxic and Xander's mom just left. And so you see just kind of how that has impacted them. The third book in the series is Caught Up, and this one follows Kai and Miller. Kai is a single dad in the MLB, and he needs a nanny for his son. He keeps firing all the other nannies, and so his coach, Monty, has a daughter named Miller who's taking a break from being a pastry chef, and she's a world-renowned pastry chef. And so their relationship kind of develops, and Miller's mom dies. Both of their moms have died in this book. And so you see how that's impacted them, and you learn the truth about Miller and Monty's relationship of, what it took to raise her as a single dad, and just kind of why she makes the decisions that she does make, and going from never wanting to settle down to being okay with settling down. The fourth book in the series, and this one, there's 5 books in this series, not 4. The fourth book in the series is about Kai's little brother, Isaiah, and Kennedy, who is the athletic trainer. She comes in and she's supposed to be working as the team's doctor. But once the head doctor finds out that she is a woman, he does not want to allow her to be the team doctor. And so you see from Kennedy's perspective what it's like to break into a male dominated field of sports, especially baseball, and how having a relationship with a player by accident um, kind of impacts her career, and just the trauma that they're overcoming together, because Kennedy's mom is, her whole family is a piece of work. She was kind of being forced into a marriage that she did not want to be in, and ultimately they called off that marriage. And so you see how that impacts her. I really enjoyed this one. The last book in the series is about Rio and Hallie. This is a second chance romance. They grew up together. Hallie was the girl next door. She moved into Rio's family, and they end up breaking up because of, I don't want to spoil it, but they end up breaking up because decisions are made, and they didn't necessarily make the decisions that ultimately caused them to break up, but one of them knew that something could happen and didn't know how to communicate that. And so it causes a wedge in the relationship. And so for 6 years they don't talk to each other, and then they both end up in Chicago, Rio playing professional hockey, and Hallie is there in an interior design internship, and she is designing his house, and he doesn't know that she's the person who he's hired to design her house, because he just saw his neighbor's house and was like, I love this. And so that is how she kind of gets involved with that. And you see, they kind of catch up, and you learn what's happened over the past 6 years, what caused them to break up. And reading this book, I guessed what happened. I knew that there was an affair, that Rio's dad was involved in. I knew that pretty early on in the book, but they never say who the affair is with. And I had my suspicions, and then it finally got to that part, and I was like, I knew it. I enjoyed these books for sure. To the book that I'm reading now, and the book that I'm going to read in March and April, probably, or some of the books that I'll read. In Her Own League, also by Liz Tomford. The Windy City series is by Liz Tomford, the 5 books in there. In Her Own League is about Monty and Reese. Reese is taking over the baseball team that Kai and Isaiah play for, and Monty is the coach for. And so Monty and Reese, they're figuring out that dynamic. Monty's under the impression that Reese doesn't want him there. Reese is the first professional Major League Baseball woman owner, and she inherited the company from her family, and so she's trying to make a name for herself. And so you see their dynamic. I'm excited to read this book. I'll probably finish it this weekend. It's Friday when I'm recording this. It's going to be posted on Monday, so I'll probably finish it sometime this weekend or next week. The other book that I'm really looking forward to reading in the month of March is by S.A. Cosby. I am going to read All the Sinners Bleed. This book, the description, it says, a black sheriff, a serial killer, a small town ready to combust. Titus Crown is the first black sheriff in the history of Chiron County, Virginia. In recent decades, quiet Chiron has only had 2 murders. But after years of working as an FBI agent, Titus knows better than anyone that while his hometown might seem like a hand of moonshine, cornbread, and honeysuckle, secrets always fester under the surface. Then a year ago, to the day after Titus's election, a school teacher is killed by a former student, and the student is fatally shot by Titus's deputies. As Titus investigates the shootings, he unearths terrible crimes in a serial killer who has been hiding in plain sight, haunting the dirt lanes and woodland clearings of Chiron. With the killer's possible connections to local church and the town's harrowing history weighing on him, Titus projects confidence about closing the case while concealing a painful secret from his own past. At the same time, he also has to contend with a far-right group that wants to hold a parade in celebration of the town's Confederate history. Sharon is Titus's home and his heart, but where faith and violence meet, there will be reckoning. So I'm excited to read these two books. I understand that not everyone loves romance, though, and so before I started this episode, I was walking around the newsroom and I asked people, what are they reading right now? What did they just finish reading? And so here are a couple of books to add to your TBR list from the KAMR Local 4 newsroom. Princess, our reporter Princess, is currently reading Nightingale by Christine Hanna. Our weekend anchor and reporter Jack is reading Crockett, The Real-Life Adventures of the Frontier Legend by Buddy Levy. Micah, our audio person, is reading Dungeon Lord by Hugo Heska. Christian, one of our photographers, is reading Two Towers, Lord of the Rings by J.R. Tolkien. Alex, one of our producers, is naming Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss. Macy, one of our digital one of our digital producers, is reading A Little Life by Hanya Yanhara. Cheryl, our executive producer, is reading Ruthless Pursuit by Renee Parker. Cheryl and I both love reading romance books, and like kind of books like that, and so that's fun. Andy, our anchor Andy, is reading Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir. He said that there is a movie coming out about it, and so he is re-listening to this on audiobooks. If you read any of these books, be sure to let me know. You can email me your books that you're reading on your current TBR list, books that you want to read, books that you want me to read. My email is mclark@KAMR. Thank you for joining me on this episode of 4 More Pages. I'll see you on the next one. My email is mclark@kamr.com. I didn't finish that properly, but thank you for joining me on this episode of 4 More Pages. I'll see you on the next one.